let's get this show on the road, shall we? Where are we? Where are we? Hi friends, it is she, it is I, it is me, it is Bryony, and welcome to my YouTube, where today is the start of a brand new series documenting my journey doing the artist's way for the very first time, start to finish. I'm outlining that now because this is actually my second attempt to complete the artist's way, and my first attempt I didn't last very long. I got up to week 2, and in total there's 12 weeks for you to complete consecutively, ideally. So the artist's way, got it right in front of me here, snazzy. It's a snazzy book, written by Julia Cameron. It's been, I think it's been out for a few years, maybe a few decades now, and a lot of well-known people, celebrities in the arts have raved about it, but also ordinary people like me have used it as well. As kind of a way, kind of a bit of a wake up, a bit of a guide to really tap into your creativity, especially if you're feeling like you're in a bit of a lull situation, that you've kind of like lost your creative spark, etc., which are obviously all things that I'm saying from my personal opinions of where I'm at, okay? And I've had enough, right? I've had enough. I want to tap into my creativity again. And to also build confidence around my creativity as well, because I feel like that's really ebbed and flowed throughout my music career of 10 years, and as I'm getting older I feel like, well, I'm waffling now, so let's just get into it, okay? So let's get into my whys. Let's go into my whys. I've wrote them down right here on this one as a starting point. Okay, so we've got 3 reasons why I'm doing the artist's way. So number 1, feeling like as I get older, maybe feeling more comfortable and settled, that I don't have much important things to say anymore, and therefore I feel quite voiceless. Despite my authentic platforms, my followers, my listeners, and my creative achievements within my career so far. Okay, interesting. Number 2, feeling underwhelmed, uninspired, and perhaps a lack of self-belief, and a lot of online comparing with other music artists. Guilty! Which I catch myself doing all the time, and to be fair, I think I'm actually getting better at this to be honest, but you know, as soon as I pick up my phone and I open Instagram or TikTok, someone's obviously doing something amazing, like they've just announced a tour or a new record or something amazing, right? Which I'm like obviously envious of, but also I'm obviously happy for that artist to achieve these amazing things, because it is hard in the music industries, it's hard being a creative, it's hard to not give up, it's hard to keep on producing time after time, even if you don't know who's listening or watching or blah 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 blah. And I also know that if you feel that kind of pang of envy, then listen to it, right? Don't shove it down, just be like, oh, okay, right, clock yourself doing that, okay, right, identify it, and then be like, okay, exactly what am I envious of, and then how can I get that, you know? And so not just feel that, but actually do something about it, girl. And then thirdly, wishing I could reverse the clock mentality, yet not starting now when I could. Okay, so kind of having, it's kind of an excuse, isn't it, really? Thinking, oh, if only I was 20 again, right? And I knew what I knew now, but I had the attitude of how of what I the attitude I had when I was 20, right? Where I was probably very naive, fearless, carefree. I was willing to risk it all because I had nothing actually to risk. So I was taking risks and saying yes to everything and just being like, yeah, this is fun, this is great, cool, hardly any complaints. Whereas now it's a lot of overthinking, there's a lot of other factors to consider, which kind of restrain you, right? Anyway, I'm sure as we go, we'll discuss more of these pillars of my whys, okay? So I figured for these episodes, so each week you have to do a bit of reading in this book, and then you have tasks to complete, weekly tasks, okay? So I'm going to go over kind of a bit about what they are, but you know, if you're watching this then you probably get the gist, because it's probably you're probably already doing the Artist's Way, or maybe you're just really interested in it. I don't know your motivations. So what are my motivations? Anyway, right, pranging out. So as I read, anything that resonates with me I highlight, and oh my god, we're matching. One of us has got to change. And there's just a couple of things that I want to kind of address that I find quite interesting, because this is my journey, okay? And if you're along for the ride then great, but realistically this is for me. I guess. Okay, so one thing Julia talks about, well, let's start with this paragraph, okay? Clearly I've highlighted it for a reason. So, Miss Cameron, she goes on to say, as you learn to recognise, maybe I should hold it like this. Here we go. As you learn to recognise, nurture and protect your inner artist, you will be able to move beyond pain and creative constriction. You will learn ways to recognise and resolve fear, remove emotional scar tissue and strengthen your confidence. So I guess why I've outlined that is that the word protect really screams out to me, and I've never really considered before reading this the idea of or needing to protect your inner artist. And I think where I've lost my creativity in these ebbs and flows, but more over the past 2 years, despite releasing my debut album this year, okay? So it's a very juxtapositional situation, if that's even a word. But they, you know, things can coexist even if they're contradictory. But as I've got older, I felt like my natural gift as a singer-songwriter, musician, has dried up, you know? Again, going back to my first why, I feel quite voiceless. Like I try and write lyrics and I'm like, it's meaningless. Why is there that blockage, etc.? And then kind of giving up at that first hurdle, because previously, in the past, things have just come to me very naturally and very easily, and I haven't really had to work at it. Now I realise that in order to produce something meaningful, yeah, I do have to work at it. And yes, to do that I need to carve out actual time where I can tap into my creativity, feel that flow state flowing through me, tap into it. But in order to access that, I actually need to be more intentional with my time, intentional with my space, intentional with my goals, right? And once establishing that, I also then need to continue to protect that space, that time as an artist. Just my thoughts. Moving on to shadow artists, another concept that is new. So Miss Julia Cameron is really educating me in these readings, and it's, you know, very interesting reading. Okay, but Miss Cameron, she talks about shadow artists. I'm going to read a little bit and then, you know, analyse, discuss. So, fledgling artists may be encouraged to be art teachers. You don't say. As a rule of thumb, shadow artists judge themselves harshly, beating themselves for years over the fact that they have not acted on their dreams. This cruelty only reinforces their status as shadow artists. Remember, it takes nurturing to make an artist. Shadow artists did not receive sufficient nurturing. They blame themselves for not acting fearlessly anyhow. The reason I've resonated with that is because I have become a music lecturer, and I'm now in my 3rd year of being a music lecturer. Teaching is a new domain to me, or fairly new now. I guess it's my 3rd year. I spent the first 2 years completing my teaching qualification as well. So glad that is over, by the way. But I've got it, and actually my graduation is next week, so bring it on. And yes, I'm so grateful that my day job is still creative. It's still linked to music. Like, that is really cool. However, as fellow educators will know, it's not just about sitting in a circle and playing the guitar. It is to do with, there's a lot of management politics, pastoral care, paperwork, jumping through hoops and planning and all the dry stuff that comes with, I guess, any job, right? And it sucks up your energy, okay? It does. And you come home and you kind of run out of any creative juice for yourself. And that's what I've found over the past 2 years. But luckily, I've actually been able to reduce my hours for this year, which is why I'm doing this properly, and also why I'm now beginning to schedule, to protect, to carve out time that I actually have to be able to tap into my creativity and start making again, okay? I overthink a lot of things, and this kind of blockage, this procrastination, stops me. It paralyzes me from actually doing anything, and then you just kind of get stuck in this loop, which frustrates you, does your head in, and limits your beliefs, right? And you think, oh, I need these answers before I can start doing another project or whatever. But I think the truth is instead of going around in circles and overthinking everything, just pick up that guitar and just start making something, because that is at the heart of it. The reason you're even considering all this stuff is because it started with you picking up a guitar and songwriting, like, really. And maybe it is just that simple, and the rest will follow. Not all at once. You're always learning, but hey, you need the good product before you can get anywhere else. Not always right, that formula, but for me, that works for me. So I'm like, am I a shadow artist? Am I? And also the word fearlessly, going back to what I was saying, that kind of younger years mentality where I was very carefree, I was risking everything, but also what was I risking? Because I wasn't risking anything, because I didn't really have anything to risk. I was just being young and just being like, life is an experience, let's go, which I love, and I still completely adopt that kind of mantra. But now I have perhaps more things to lose, which I guess is yay and nay. And maybe has made me less fearless, okay? And maybe I need to get that back a bit. I can't actually wind back the clock, but I can start tomorrow, I can start today, if I'm just fearless and do it. What's really stopping me, okay? Oh my god, I've got my teacher thing, because I keep on saying okay after I say something. I hate it. Cringe. Cringe. Okay. So week 1. A gay artist. Just send that. A gay artist. Anyway, I didn't highlight it, so clearly wasn't important. So let's go on to the tasks. So Julia introduces the practice of morning pages, which she implores you to do every single day whilst you're doing the artist's way. So that's 12 whole weeks. Okay, 7 days a week. And she basically tells you, set your alarm half an hour earlier than normal. Don't even think about it. As soon as you wake up, pick up a pen and paper and write 3 pages of just whatever comes out. It can be nonsensical. It doesn't matter what it is. Just write 3 pages, and it's basically to get all that noise out that you've woken up with out of your head and onto paper, which you do not reread, you do not show anyone. You can just stuff in an envelope and shove it in a drawer or rip it up or whatever, and it's just so you get all that noise out of your head, so then you can, I presume, get more clarity throughout the day, and obviously that makes more sense to do that as soon as you wake up, you know, as a starting point. I'm really bad at the morning pages. I probably do, so far I've probably done them 3 times out of 7 this week. So it is a goal for me to work on that, but I genuinely just forgot. So I need to be more intentional, maybe leave my notebook and pen literally on my bedside table, so the first thing I see is that, and also maybe with a post-it note being like, do not ignore, this is important. Right in me, bitch. So that's morning pages. Then on this page she lists 20 creative affirmations, which you're then meant to take like a handful of them that resonate with you and also write them out every single morning with your morning pages. Now, I'm really not a morning person, really. Maybe it depends on my circumstances, but daily life, no. And that takes more time to write them out. So what I've done, because I guess it's all interpretation, isn't it? That there's no actual only one right way to do things, right? Is I've got myself a little notebook, which is purely for the artist's way. And I picked it up at an airport actually, and it's just like energy flows. And I thought it was so cute and also very reasonably priced. And the first page are my chosen creative affirmations. So instead of writing them out, I actually read them. Okay, so I'm going to read them to you because I know you're nosy and you're dying to know which ones I chose, obviously. So number 1, I am allowed to nurture my artist. I am willing to experience my creative energy. As I listen to the creator within me, I am led. My creativity leads me to forgiveness and self-forgiveness. I think that's a really important one for me. 5, I am willing to use my creative talents. And finally, there is a divine plan of goodness for me. Those are my top 2, number 6 and the forgiveness one. I think I carry a lot of guilt for previous actions, etc. Even though I'm sure people literally have forgotten or moved on, because girl, move on. But I feel like I harbour a lot of shit. And I probably should go to therapy just to air all those things out. But for now, this is kind of my creative therapy, so, and it's free. Anywho, and then the third and final task that is every single week is taking yourself out on an artist date. So this has to be done alone, I believe, where you can go out for like an hour or 2 and basically feed off any inspiration you immerse yourself in. Now, for me, that's definitely like going to an art gallery. However, now that I live in rural village life, going to like a city is slightly harder for me. And I know museums exist in villages and stuff, and you know, I could actually go to some museums, little like galleries and stuff, but my social anxiety kind of stops me. So that's something I'm going to work on, and one of my artist dates I will do that to get over that, because also I'm like, why do I feel like that? Like it goes against my inner grain. But also it can just be like, it doesn't have to be extravagant. It could just mean like walking to your local offie, getting a Fanta lemon and having a cigarette on the park bench, like a doozy, and people watch, go to a cafe, whatever. Which is kind of cool. And again, it comes back to carving out that space for you where it's not necessarily work, like playing my guitar all the time, but it's actually taking you outside intentionally and maybe getting that kind of subconscious inspiration from maybe something you see, the colours, the changing colours of the trees since it's autumn now, and whatever. Okay, cool. I'm glad we're on the same page. Okay, so my artist date this week didn't actually involve me leaving the house. I was a bit lazy. But on Wednesdays I thankfully only work the afternoon, so I have the morning to myself. And usually my routine with that is I'm still out all day because I practically go swimming at 9:30 in the morning. Go swimming, go in the sauna, the steam room, have a little treat, wash my hair, and then have some lunch and then get myself to work. But this week I was a little lazy, and I didn't really feel like going swimming. But as soon as I woke up, which was about 6 a.m, bearing in mind, as soon as I woke up, my head was full of this noise, I'm going to call it, and essentially straight away I was in cortisone central, right? My brain, there was multiple internal monologues happening all at once. I should be doing this. Why haven't I started this? Today I need to do this, yada 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 yada, and almost like fighting amongst themselves. To which I thought, well, nothing's on fire. There's nothing I necessarily need to do today. No one's telling me to do any of these things. Yes, there are things I would like to do, but they don't have to be. There's no deadline. Okay? And it was infuriating. Anywho, long story short, she says famously, I'm a supporter of my local library, so I have my little library card and I like to obviously use it to get books from the library. And I've been a bit of a bad library card holder because I had 2 books which were overdue, oops. And I was halfway through both of them, and there was one that there's always one that you prefer over the other, right? So, which was a book by Jeanette Winterson called Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, which was a very, very, once you've read it, you understand why it's called that, and I think that's a really clever, clever title. And I loved Jeanette Winterson's book on the oranges. Is it Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit? Which I read as a teenager, which my Aunt Mary put me onto. So clearly she knew something before I could quite figure it out. And it's one of my favourite books I've ever read. That and Sylvia Plath, obviously. And so it was a really good book to read because it's just about 240 pages long. It's quite a slim book, and it was kind of like an autobiography of Jeanette Winterson, but also kind of giving more context to the Oranges book. And I was on page 100 and it was overdue, and I kind of just wanted a morning in bed. I wanted to rest. So I thought, well, I know what happens when I get into a bit of a reading session is that all these voices, useless voices by the way, they calm down because my mind becomes focused. I get into a rhythm, and it's kind of like a sense of meditation, right? So I gave myself the morning off completely, and I finished the rest of the book. So yeah, so I read 140 pages roughly. It took me a few hours, it did take me the morning, but it was nice. I was just in bed, occasionally would go down to make a tea or a coffee, come back up and pick up where I left off and finished it. And in that you kind of get a rewarding sense of achievement, but also kind of context and a wider insight into someone else's life, which is good for me because it takes me out of my kind of individual shell. You know, it's not the Bryony show, or is it? And it gets me to focus on something that's not related to me and my work. And it was nice. It's fun to do. It's really good to pick up a book. I would really recommend it, and also for myself to follow my own advice. So that was my artist date of the week. And then each week in Le Book, you get given approximately 10 tasks to complete that week, which I think is where I also faltered in my first attempt back in January, because I didn't have the time nor patience to kind of do the 10 tasks. And so in watching other people do the artist's way on YouTube, someone said that instead of doing 10, that they choose 5. And that Miss Cameron told them to do that in the book, and I must have missed that part. You know, my sense of being an overachiever audited that part out. Or it's just a game of Chinese whispers. Who knows? Anyway, I'm taking this person's advice and I'm only choosing 5 out of the 10, like a pick and mix, okay? For the ones that I think are more relevant to me or that I want to do. Whatever, right? And also, if it lets me achieve completing the 12 weeks, then have at it, right? So, what I chose. So along with the artist date, the affirmations, the morning pages, which I suck at, hands up, I continued to choose out of this week's tasks to time travel. It's a quote here. To time travel, right? To list 3 old champions of your creative self-worth. This is your hall of champions, those who wish you and your creativity well. Okay, so I've got my 3 champions, and I thought this was a really wholesome activity to do. And I'm gonna shout them out, because why not? So my first creative champion is Matthew Pinfield, who is my long-term music producer. He's produced all of my records, so if you love my records or you rate the production or anything, he's your man. For anyone, you know, he's based in Wolverhampton, so whether you're local or travelling further afield, anyway, shout out to Matthew Pinfield and his business Grand Flat Recordings. And he's probably my biggest champion from my point of view, in terms of, obviously we've worked very closely together for a number of years. He's the closest thing I've ever had to a manager. He offers me informal mentorship from someone, from a creative to a creative, right? Wow, that was really gross. I'm forgetting where this is going. This is not just a personal diary. People are going to watch this. Wow. Matt is also full of kindness and is quite extroverted, I would say, in comparison to me. So he's very vocal with his enthusiasm, with his opinions, and for him to vocalise his belief in me quite consistently, but which is quite natural for him, especially when we're in the studio and, you know, praise be there, and, you know, we're flowing with ideas. That validation is so important to me. And obviously through working throughout the years together, we've worked at this, we've authentically gained this creative trust in one another, where to the point where, you know, no idea from me is really a silly idea, even if I'm like, oh, cringe. But to be cringe is to be free. Am I right? So thank you, Matt, for the past, for the present, and for the future, I am sure. My second champion is my dad. It's very male heavy, actually, my list. So thanks, Dad, for bringing me up on music, right? You know, for him to be such a music fan and playing me all sorts of music growing up, if I didn't have that, would I have the same passion for music now, or like throughout my teenage years and childhood, etc.? Who knows, right? So he allowed me to, he bridged that starting point, I guess, of my interests. And there's such a fun story that my dad loves to tell, and I love to tell, so I'm going to tell it. That I was a little baby brownie, was in the passenger seat, and he was driving me somewhere, whatever, and we're driving home, and he parked up on the drive and got out the car, you know, to go inside, and turned back, and I was still sat in the car, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I reply, "The song hasn't finished yet." No notes, no notes. And I believe it was a Beatles song, and I was like, "What? Why am I going to leave this when I'm listening to such mastery? You know, I want to listen to the whole song. What's the rush?" And you know, that's really cute. Like, I'm even awing at myself. Like, that's like a good nugget, you know, a good indicator of my inner direction. What am I saying? My dad's always been very encouraging of me to pursue music, you know, guitar lessons, and vinyl. Like, he's a huge vinyl collector. So the way he kind of explores music and appreciates music, you know, from like putting a record on, sitting down with the record, reading the lyrics and the booklets and everything like that, and like the artistry behind it all, is really admirable, and I'm really happy he takes the time out of life to do those things, and I wish I did it more, to be honest. Usually also my dad is the first person that I want to share any music that me and Matt have produced in the studio, because he's so non-judgmental of any music that I show him. Over the years, I guess my lyrics have perhaps been described as depressive, you know, it very inward looking, right? But my dad, you know, listens to Nick Cave, so that just says it all, right? So I don't really feel that insecure or anything to kind of share these very vulnerable and heartfelt lyrics, even if they're a bit close to the bone. Cool. He also says the best songs are the sad songs, and I like that. I like it. I was just thinking to myself, do I agree with that? Because, you know, I love listening to Kesha, and usually her songs aren't sad. But then also the songs off her Animal album, some of them were sad, and I really resonated with them and loved them, and still love them now. So maybe you want to share your thoughts on that in the comments below. And third and finally, an old friend of mine who sadly have lost touch with, no fault other than my own, because I'm silly and just, I don't know, bad at socialising, I guess. But Mr. Tony, whether he'll ever watch this or not, regardless, I hope he does. And then that's kind of like my little olive branch. And this is so personal, so excuse me. But yeah, to Tony for always consistently his kind words, and again that kind of outward vocal belief, comparing me to the greats such as Carole King and introducing me to Carole King. Like, thank you. The album Tapestry, 10 out of 10. And just, yeah, being ongoingly super supportive, and kind of having the sky's the limit type attitude. And altogether, they've enabled me to pursue my passion with some confidence. So thanks, guys. And then another thing that Miss Julia tells us to do, which I chose to do, is imaginary lives, where if you had 5 other lives to lead, what would you do in each of them? So like pilot, cowhand, a monk, whatever. So I put banking and finance, real estate, being a tour guide, because if you know me, I love to travel, and also kind of want to turn my YouTube channel into like music, vlogging, travel, because it's a complete combination of who I am. A therapist. I'm very glad I didn't become a therapist. A carpenter. Working at a record label. There's still time. I could trade in my little rural life for the city life, you know. And a swimming instructor. And I know that's more than 5, but I got into this, okay? I got into this. Because I love swimming. I'm such a water baby. I'm a Leo. I'm born in July. So I'm a summer baby too. And when I was a kid, you just could not get me out of the water. And I try and go swimming at least once a week. A carpenter, because my dad's a carpenter and I just think it's so cool, like, to have that knowledge, and sadly I don't. And yeah, the tour guide thing, like, I love hiking, so if I was like a mountaineer, or like I could just like take groups of people like around the world, like, and also as a job, and also have those cultural experiences myself whilst on working, like, perfection. The faces I make. And then she tells us to choose one and to kind of do it that week, and I kind of did 2. So I did carpentry, kinda, because I went to IKEA and I bought a flat pack. I bought a bedside table and I put it together all by myself. I made a few mistakes. I had to, you know, undo some awkward screwing. That's a clip. And I count that as carpentry. It's now fully in use. It works. It stands on its own feet, etc., etc. So I'm proud. I'm proud. And also banking and finance. I love messing with money. You know, I'm like the typical granddad who put like money under the mattress, but also then money in like all sorts of places. And what I did this week is I opened up a stocks and shares ISA on Trading 212. Cue the Trading 212 advert right now, perfectly. Maybe in a few years when I've really worked at this YouTube channel and I can monetize it, maybe. And I've been doing loads of research on like ETFs, diversifying your portfolio, and listening to a lot of finance podcast episodes on the Diary of a CEO. Shout out to you, Stephen. Honestly, I love your podcast, so just saying. All right, I think that is it in my little book of The Artist's Way. So yeah, I'm excited for week 2. I already feel quite rejuvenated in my creativity. Like after this first week, I'm kind of ready to kind of like release the ball, you know, like kind of crack on and sink my teeth into something, which could be album number 2. So on that note, thanks for joining me. Comment, subscribe, like, share, whatever you want. Debate with me, whatever. And I'll see you for week 2.